The Denver Nuggets with Jokic, Murray, and Porter, they have the core of players that they can win year in and year out for the next 3 to 4 years. They're that good. And their cast of players off the bench, and Brown, and who had a fantastic series against Miami, really did. And the way they play like a team, and they have one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA. This team could win year in and year out. And everybody keeps talking about Steve Kerr, okay? How great Steve Kerr has been for the Golden State Warriors. Maybe because he comes from the Chicago Bulls. He comes from Phil Jackson and obviously the Triangle. Everybody loves Steve Kerr. But Steve Kerr wasn't the reason why, or had any difference if he was the coach or not the coach of the Golden State Warriors on why they won 3 to 4 championships. He was not the guy. But Mike Malone is as good a coach right now in the NBA as any coach. He really is. He preaches defense first, and he loves moving up and down the court. It's speed game. When you've watched the Golden State Warriors, their talent year in and year out, and how they ran their offense with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, when these guys were healthy, they were up and down the court. And they were a really good team defending team. When Golden State won those titles, they were a top 7, top 8 defense in all of the NBA. This Denver Nugget team was top 3 all season long. And when you have a guy in the middle as good as Nikola Jokic, and what he can do on the court, and even off the court, when he's sitting on the bench as a captain, rooting on the players. He was in the final game, what was it, Game 5. The last, 4 minutes of the game? For like the first minute of that 4 minutes, he was on the bench. He was wiggling his towel, shaking his towel, getting his team excited about what's going on in this game. And by the way, game number 5 was one of the sloppiest NBA games I've ever seen. But nevertheless, when your team wins the sloppy games, when your team could find a way to win those games, that is the sign of an elite team. And what we saw throughout the playoffs, they lost 4 games against the Western Conference best and the Eastern Conference champions.
And they didn't even lose against the Lakers.
What they did, it was one of the best runs in the last 15 years in the NBA. It really was. Go look at the teams they beat. And I know everybody says the Lakers aren't that good and they shouldn't have went to the Western Conference Finals. Maybe true. But they played well in the second round. They beat the Memphis Grizzlies, who was the second best team in the Western Conference. Some people say the third best team in the NBA. They ran right through them in the first round. What we saw throughout the playoffs is just dominance. And each player, even Brown, when everybody says, when we saw the great Golden State Warrior teams, especially when Kevin Durant was there, it was 4 players. It was Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. Throughout the playoffs, especially in the Western Conference Finals and the championship, it was those 3 players that I mentioned, Murray, Porter, and Jokic. And then there was a scheme of players. There was a bunch of different players that showed up in each series and were that 4th guy. Aaron Gordon, in the first 2 rounds, was the 4th guy. Even in the first game, or really the first 2 games of the series against Miami, he was the guy. And then there were guys like Bruce Brown who showed up in certain games when you needed somebody to pick up the pace for the power forwards, the front 5 guys, and your biggest guys were your big man Jokic, and you have Bruce Brown showing up and getting the important rebounds and getting fouled and going to the free throw line over and over and over again. That stops the clock. That gives you time. Caldwell-Pope throughout the playoffs defensively was all over the place, defending all different positions, the guard position, the shooting guard position, the small forward position. Jeff Green, when he was playing, leadership on the bench. That's what these teams need. You don't need all around a big 3 to win a championship. You don't.